Thank you, Madam Speaker. My question is to the Prime Minister.
The member will resume his seat. There is a wall of noise starting to mount, which is not to be tolerated. The member for Ford has the call.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. My question is to the Prime Minister. How will cutting red tape ease the compliance burden on small business and help create jobs? And how will the government's plans to remove red tape been received by business and community groups?
I call the Leader of the House.
Madam Speaker, the Prime Minister was unable to hear the question because of the pathetic noise coming from the opposition. I would ask that the member for Ford be allowed to ask his question again, and that the opposition to learn to behave like adults.
The Leader of the House has in fact made a perfectly valid point. There will be silence on my left, or some people might leave us.
For Westacott of the Business
Council of Australia. The member for Gellibrand will desist. The Prime Minister has the call.
The release of the federal government's Repeal Day legislation marks a turning point in dealing with the high costs and inefficiencies faced by businesses and consumers in our economy.
The Prime Minister will resume his seat. We seem to have a new tactic of having an outburst of infectious laughter. Which I suspect may become disorderly. And I suspect it might begin with the member for Franklin. The member for Franklin is warned. The Prime Minister will resume his seat. You'd better be a proper point of order.
Madam Speaker, are you ruling people out of order because they're laughing?
The member will resume his seat. The member for Franklin will leave the chamber under 94A. The Prime Minister has the call. There will be silence on my left.
Madam Speaker, the Leader of the Opposition—
The Prime Minister has the call.
The Leader of the Opposition referred to what he called the Royal Comedy Channel. I think that's offensive, and he should be asked to withdraw.
To assist the House, the Leader of the Opposition will withdraw.
I withdraw. I didn't mean to offend the Prime Minister. I completely withdraw.
The Prime Minister has the call, and you can regard yourselves as universally warned. In accordance with their practice, I will not hear the Leader of the Manager of Opposition Business. He has abused the standing orders twice already. The Prime Minister has the call. You completed? Are you rising to ask a question? Well, the call goes to the opposition for a question.
The Surf wouldn't put up with this.
I thought he wanted
I call
another
the
apology.
Honourable the Leader of the Opposition.
Thanks, Madam Speaker. My question is to the Prime Minister. The Prime Minister has chosen to break his pre-election promises on education, cutting money from schools, trade training centres and research and development. Prime Minister
is unparliamentary. He will withdraw.
I withdraw.
I call the Honourable the Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. My question is to the Prime Minister. The Prime Minister has chosen to splurge $5.5 billion annually on a paid parental leave scheme, which will give well-paid executives an extra $75,000 to have a baby. At the same time, delay the rollout of the National Disability Insurance Scheme, which will hurt 460,000 people with a disability and their families. Prime Minister, don't these choices reflect the government's twisted priorities?
Leader of the House.
Madam Speaker, the opposition is given great licence with these questions. We understand that most of the most of the cards are stacked on this side of the deck, but questions should not contain argument. Now, they will naturally sometimes do contain some argument, but the phraseology of the Leader of the Opposition is clearly not in order in a question, and he should not be allowed to ask a question with that phraseology included.
Manager of Opposition Business.
The Treasurer used the unparliamentary term lie and should have to withdraw it.
Did the Honourable Treasurer use that term? The Honourable Treasurer will come back to the dispatch box and withdraw.
I withdraw.
Thank you. Now, on the question of argument in questions, strict interpretation of the standing orders does say there shall not be argument. However, traditionally speakers have given some latitude. The member for Wakefield. Has been interpreted rather liberally, and I consider in this particular week where we have so much stress on the question of freedom of speech, particularly coming from the opposition, I will let the question stand and call the Honourable the Prime Minister.
Well, Madam Speaker, I will do my best to answer both elements of the Leader of the Opposition's question in a straightforward way. We are not delaying the National Disability Insurance Scheme, and the Leader of the Opposition—
My question to the Prime Minister. How does the Prime Minister explain the following priorities? Breaking election promises by cutting health and education, cutting payments to orphans of veterans but paying some Australians $75,000 to have a baby, cutting protections against bigotry but not fighting for Australian jobs, awarding knighthoods but cutting the wages of cleaners?
I call the Honourable the Prime Minister.
Well, Madam Speaker—
There will be silence on my right and my left.
Madam Speaker, the Leader of the Opposition's humming Rule Britannia across the table, when in fact what happened yesterday was the restoration of knighthoods and damehoods in the Order of Australia. That's what happened. That's what happened. That's what happened. So I say to the Honourable Bill Shorten, a title derived from the United Kingdom. I say to the Honourable the Leader of the Opposition—
Business will resume its seat. Please refer to people by their correct title.
I say to the Honourable the Leader of the Opposition,
yes,
a title derived from Britain. I say to the Honourable the Leader of Her Majesty's Opposition, start telling the truth. Start telling the truth for a change. Start telling the truth for a change. Now, Madam Speaker, not one of the smears and slurs contained in the Leader of the Opposition's statement, because it wasn't a question, it was a statement. Not one of them is true. I'll tell you what our priorities are.
And the member for Wakefield will also join the member for Rankin. The Prime Minister has the call.
I'll tell you what our priorities are. They're helping Australian families by scrapping the carbon tax. Labor wants the carbon tax to stay. They're helping Australian jobs by scrapping the mining tax. Labor wants the mining tax to stay. It's restoring peace in our workplaces by restoring the ABCC. Labor wants the ABCC to go. Madam Speaker, our priorities, Madam Speaker, our priorities—
The Leader of the Opposition will desist.
Our priorities, Madam Speaker, are those of the Australian people. And what the Australian people want is less tax, less regulation, more freedom, more prosperity, and that's what they'll get from this government.
I call the honourable member for Melbourne.
Does the government have a plan to bring back knighthoods and dames, but no plan for Australian jobs? Prime Minister, why is the Abbott government's priority a plan to bring back knighthoods?
I call the honourable the Prime Minister.
wasted question.
Well, Madam Speaker, this is
the Prime Minister was the Leader of the Opposition's question was listened to in silence by those on my left. You'll listen similarly to the answer. The Prime Minister has the call.
This is a government which is capable of doing several things at the same time. But, Madam Speaker, our priority is lifting the burdens on Australian families. And last week we tried to scrap the carbon tax and Labor made the carbon tax stay. Yesterday we tried to scrap the mining tax and Labor made the mining tax stay. We are trying to clean up the building and construction industry. Labor is trying to stop that. We are trying to get rid of union rorts, rackets and rip-offs and corruption of the sort that the former member for Dobell was engaged in. Labor is still protecting that kind of wrongdoing. Now, Madam Speaker, these are our priorities. I am proud
the Prime
of them,
Minister
Madam
will
Speaker.
resume his seat. The Manager of Opposition Business on a point of order.
If there was ever a breach of Standing 104A, it's what we just heard.
Yeah.
The Prime Minister has the call. I call the honourable member for Canning.
Madam Speaker, my question is to the Minister for Education. I remind the Minister of his recent visit to the Ocean Road.
Before the federal election, which we found the money, thanks to the Treasurer and the Prime Minister, we found the money to support Western Australian education. The Shadow Minister can't even be bothered turning up to question time, can't even be bothered turning up to Parliament because she's in Western Australia when the Parliament's sitting, continuing to spread her misinformation, her deceit and her dishonesty in Western Australia. Her job is here in Canberra doing her job as the member for Adelaide, but she can't be bothered.
The Minister will resume his seat. The Minister will resume his seat. The Manager of Opposition Business.
It was unparliamentary language. It should be withdrawn.
Lie is unparliamentary, dishonesty and deceit is not.
That is not right.
I won't have you following the Speaker.
The Minister will resume his seat. The Minister will resume his seat. The member for Hunter on a point of order.
You stepped over the line, fine.
Madam Speaker, the Minister's responsibility in this place is to answer questions. If he wants to attack individual members, he should do so only by way of substantive motion.
What is the point of order?
That is my point of order. That is my point of order, Madam Speaker. He's not entitled to use answers to questions to attack members on this.
The member for Hunter will resume his seat. Now, I'm perfectly. I have a good memory and remember when the opposition was in government using language which was stronger than that and which was allowed. I intend to. Indeed, there was. Indeed, there was. The Manager of Opposition will resume his seat. The Minister has the call, but it would help the. It would. Oh, point of order. The member for Chisholm.
Madam Speaker, I am loath to take this point of order, and as you well know, it is within the direction of the chair what is unparliamentary besides the word lied. And if you want to impute my reputation in this previous place, then I think that is fairly baseless.
The member for Chisholm. The Minister has withdrawn. I gave leeway to the member for Chisholm. I think as a former Speaker she's entitled to have expression, and particularly in this week of freedom of speech. I call the Honourable Minister.
Very proud of the roads, where necessary, the rail and the ports that this country needs. We want the infrastructure of the 21st century because, Madam Speaker, I want to be known as the Infrastructure Prime Minister, and in order for us to be the infrastructure national government led by the infrastructure Prime Minister, we've got to work with the states. Now, if we can help the states,
Prime Minister will resume his seat. The member for Perth on point of order.
I'd like to raise a point of order on the question of relevance. We really want to know about the assets. So
I'm listening
which
very
ones
attentively.
Are being targeted in Western Australia.
Will resume his seat. The member for Isaacs on a point of order.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Relevance relevance is an important part of the standing orders. This part of the answer has nothing to do with the question that the minister was asked.
The member will reserve his seat. The minister has the call.
Madam Speaker, I'm really surprised that one of Her Majesty's counsel learned in the law would not have been able to pick that up. But Diane Smith-Gander said, think about the notion of suggesting anything to Minister Conroy. I am a committed Republican, but I didn't see you. I didn't see you on the barricades.
The Leader of the Opposition.
You were missing in action.
The Minister will resume.
Oh, no, sir. You were missing.
The Minister will resume his seat. The Minister will resume his seat forthwith. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition clearly lost control in that instance. There's been a model. To date, there has been a constant barrage and obviously a campaign being waged today. The Leader of the Opposition is warned against another outburst, and if I might say to the member for Watson, I know he has a motion coming up and I know he'd like to be in the chamber to move it. So I think he should comply with the standing orders.
Madam Speaker, point of order.
On.
I'm asking whether or not a similar warning will be given to the minister who continued to talk
no
while you're on your feet.
Well,
no, there is.
There is no.
No, Madam Speaker,
order.
if the standing orders matter, there actually is.
The member will resume his seat.
This question framed last all day.
The member for Bass has the call.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and my question is to the Minister for Immigration and Border Protection. Will the minister update the House on the number of days that have elapsed since the last successful people smuggling venture to Australia?
His seat for a moment. The member for McMahon.
Madam Speaker, the Minister for Communications still had time left of his question. I do not believe he'd concluded it, and the member for Bass rose presumably to take a point of order is now asking a question.
Had the minister completed his answer? The minister had completed his answer, and the member for Bass was on his feet. The member for McMahon on a point of order.
Madam Speaker, the member for Bass rose while the member for Watson was still on his feet, making a point of order. If he was standing to raise a question and he was out of order at the time, in accordance with precedent, Madam Speaker, you should call a member of the opposition to ask a question.
The fact of the matter was that the member for Bass was on his feet when there was no member from the opposition standing to ask a question. I'm sorry, the member for Watson had already resumed his seat when I called the member for Bass. The member for Watson.
The minister was interrupted during his answer for a point of order.
Yes.
You ruled on the point of order. At that point, the minister has the call again. You did not call the minister, but after ruling, he was entitled to the call. You simply moved on with no notice to the House. We are entitled to know whether the minister has concluded.
Well,
normally, I appreciate the Prime Minister concludes the moment we stand up. But the member for Wentworth, the Minister for Communications, we had no reason to believe he concluded.
And I'm sorry that the manager of opposition business seems to think that there's need for clairvoyance to understand when the minister's finished his question. Quite clearly, he has indicated that he knows when the Prime Minister's finished, but he doesn't know when the Minister for Communications is finished. The fact of the minister is the member for Bass has the call.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And my question is to the Minister for Immigration and Border Protection. Will the minister update the House on the number of...
This budget, this is Labor, this budget...
The Treasurer will resume his seat. The manager of opposition business on a point of order.
On a point of order, Madam Speaker, under Standing Order 104A, the Treasurer is clearly not being directly relevant to the question that was asked.
The question was about budget figures and was very wide-ranging. I am listening attentively to the Treasurer's answer, and the Treasurer has the call.
Madam Speaker.
Both members will resume their seats, and then I will call the Leader of the House.
Madam Speaker, the standing orders are very clear that the opposition can only take one point of order on relevance in each question and answer. That was designed to stop this kind of disruption of question time. And the managed opposition business— oh, come on, don't—
The Leader of the House will resume his seat. The Minister will resume his seat. The Minister will resume his seat. That was the second point of order on relevance. Only one is permitted. I call the Treasurer.
And of course, the newsletter from the now Leader of the Opposition said, "This budget ensures that the benefits of the boom are spread to all corners of the country. We have brought the budget back to surplus on time as promised." And just in case you missed it on the front page, it's on the back page as well. Back in surplus on time as promised. We've delivered a surplus on time as promised. Now, the Labor Party has been out in the last 24 hours talking about their budget rules, suggesting that if we kept to their budget rules, we'd have the budget coming back in surplus. The problem is that Labor never kept to their budget rules. Therefore, they never delivered surplus. They would never deliver a surplus. They have no economic credibility. They got every single number wrong, and they left the Australian people to pick up the bill from a very bad Labor government.
I call the honourable member for McMahon.
Madam Speaker, I have another question to the Treasurer.
The member for Tangney.
Madam Speaker, you called me. You called me, Madam Speaker. I was on my feet first, Madam Speaker.
I
have a question for the Treasurer.
Yes, I did.
Yes, thank you, Madam Speaker. My question is to the Treasurer. I refer to the Treasurer to the fact—
just pause for a moment?
Certainly, Madam Speaker.
It's the same principle that applied before, and the member for McMahon was on his feet before the member for Tangney. I call the member for McMahon.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. My question is to the Treasurer. I refer the Treasurer to the fact that budget deficits have doubled on his watch, adding $68 billion across the forward estimates. If the Treasurer believes we're in a budget emergency, why have you doubled the deficit?
I call the honourable the Treasurer.
Because it's your deficit. $123 billion of Labor deficit. And the numbers tell the truth.
The Treasurer will resume his seat. The member for Management of Opposition Business on a point of order.
Madam Speaker, the Treasurer should be directing his comments through the chair.
It's getting very close. I call the Treasurer. I call the Treasurer. The Manager of Opposition Business on a point of order.
On a point of order, Madam Speaker, you just indicated that the point of order I'd raised was very close, as though there was a problem with raising the most basic point of parliamentary behaviour, which is to refer to people.
The seat is not entitled to put argument. The Treasurer has the call. The Treasurer has the call.
Labor, let's be very, very clear. This is the last economic statement from the member.
The member for McMahon will remove himself under 94A and resume some sensibility.
That's just increased the IQ of the Labor Party. And if the member for Lilly goes out, that'll double the IQ of the Labor Party. The bottom line, Madam Speaker, is the Labor Party—
The member for Chifley will desist. The Treasurer has the call.
Oh, come on.
The member for Swan will desist.
Lilly.
Oh, yes. Sorry, the member for Lilly. There'll be silence on my left. The Treasurer has the call.
The Labor Party and the member for Lilly must be incredibly proud of the legacy. It was the member for Lilly that promised a surplus.
The Leader of the House.
Madam Speaker, the member for Lilly is red-faced and screaming across the chamber, and we cannot hear the Treasurer's attempts at answering the question. I'd ask you to get the member for Isaacs and the member for Lilly under control.
The member for Hunter.
Well, Madam Speaker, why wouldn't members on this side be excited when the Treasurer has conceded the assertion from the shadow Treasurer?
His seat. Now, there has obviously been a concerted effort of noise and an attempt to disrupt the proceedings of the House today, which is no doubt a precursor to the motion which the member for Watson is so anxious to move. I have been very careful to allow the member for Watson to remain in the chamber because I wouldn't want to deprive him of his opportunity. So we will have no more of the screaming and the yelling. We will have quiet for the rest of question time. I notice that the questions from the opposition are listened to in silence, and then the raucous begins. So we will have some demeanour and some proper behaviour back in the chamber. The Treasurer has the call.
Well, Madam Speaker, if economic performance is based on actually delivering a surplus, the Labor Party failed at every count. It was the member for Lilly that delivered a $27 billion deficit, then a $54 billion deficit, then a $47 billion deficit, then a $43 billion deficit.
The Treasurer will resume his seat. The member for Isaacs.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The question was about the $68 billion that this Treasurer has added to the deficit,
The member will resume his seat. The member will resume his seat. The member for Isaacs knows he must not abuse the standing orders. The question was wide-ranging, and the answer is in order. And I call the Honourable the Treasurer.
So he must be immensely proud of his record of $190 billion of deficits. You're a winner. You're a winner, old Swanee. And out of that, moving forward, I say to the member for Lilly.
The Treasurer will resume his seat. The Manager of Opposition Business on the point of order.
I'd ask the Treasurer to direct his remarks through the chair.
The Treasurer has the call and will kindly address his remarks to the
So
chair.
what an incredibly proud moment it must be for the member for Lilly to have seen as a—
There'll be silence. The Leader of the House has the call.
I think you were right earlier, Madam Speaker. I think it was a deliberate campaign today to disrupt the parliament. Madam Speaker, a document is tabled in accordance with the list circulated to honourable members earlier today. Full details of the document will be recorded in the votes and proceedings. You will do no such.